So in targeting the different smartphone platforms that are available, we need to have an understanding of what exactly they are and what it is that makes them different. We'll be discussing 4 smartphone platforms, beginning first with Blackberry. Blackberry runs on a proprietary operating system. That means you can't have a look at the code that exists for it. The only way to get your hands on that is to be an employee of Blackberry, a software developer, and a trusted one to be able to develop for their operating system. Now, there are 2 Blackberry operating systems that we should be aware of. The first is the Blackberry operating system. This is its name. This is actually something that we're seeing less and less of because this has been replaced by today's modern Blackberry 10 operating system. Whereas the first one, the Blackberry OS, was custom developed and based on a Java virtual machine environment, the second one, the Blackberry 10 operating system, is based on something called QNX. QNX is something that is a lightweight version of an operating system called Unix. In fact, many people have been wondering for years, why is it that Blackberry, which so many people have been predicting the death of for so long, has indeed not gone out of business? Now, one of the major reasons for that is actually QNX. It is wholly owned by Blackberry, and yet it is used in many different devices, more than just Blackberries. In fact, there are many different automobiles where their onboard systems that you can interact with are actually running on QNX. This has been part of what helps the company stay running. As far as applications programmed for the Blackberry operating system, we are going to be talking about applications that are programmed in a language called C++. However, the Blackberry 10 OS also contains something called an Android runtime layer, which makes it possible for you to download and run Android applications on Blackberry 10 devices. Beyond Blackberry, we also have Windows phones. Now, this is also a proprietary OS, which, just as with the Blackberry one, the only way you're ever going to be able to see the code is to be an employee of Microsoft and get your hands working on that. Windows Mobile was actually the very first operating system, which began in 2000 but was decommissioned and no longer supported in early January 2013. It was replaced with what we know today as to be the Windows Phone operating system, and it itself exists in multiple different flavors. There's the Windows Phone 7, Windows Phone 8, and Windows Phone 8.1 operating systems. Now, as far as application programming goes for these devices, you can create anything to run on them as long as it goes through the .NET runtime environment. Although for that, we're primarily going to be talking about something called C#. Beyond Windows Phone, we move into iOS, also a proprietary operating system, which is actually based off of a modified version of BSD kernel. First released in June 2007, the iPhone was regarded as a joke by the company that dominated the mobile market at the time, Blackberry. They had laughed off the potential threat that the iPhone may have given them, but now we see today where exactly that has ended up. Part of the reason for this has been that Apple has focused significantly on the user experience and interaction with the device, whereas Blackberry was targeting a more business and government-oriented market where security was paramount more so than a user experience. For the iOS, the most current version is iOS 8. And we find that when we are discussing the different applications that can be made for the iPhone platform, we will be talking about primarily Objective-C, although very recently, with the announcement of iOS 8, Apple also announced a brand new programming language based on Objective-C called Swift. Swift being a programming language designed to make programming Objective-C significantly easier for developers. Finally, Android. Unlike the previous 3, Android is an open source operating system. This means if you want to get your hands on the source code for the operating system, all you have to do is go online and download it. You can look at every single line of code. Now, this is very helpful because open source systems are open to every developer in the world, which they can then find things such as security vulnerabilities and publish fixes for them. So it's very handy, and it also makes it easy to put on many different devices. That's why you see so many Android devices out there, is because the operating system is available to anyone to use. You just have to figure out a way to get it to run on the hardware that you are going to base it on. With regard to programming applications for Android devices, we will be using the Java programming language. With regard to that, even though we can develop for basically all Android devices, keeping in mind the API levels that we are using, we need to understand something called Android fragmentation. If we take a look at who is producing Android devices, we can see that a considerable amount, over half in fact, of the Android devices out there are coming from Samsung, with a few other manufacturers here and there. Whereas, how many different manufacturers are making iPhones? Just Apple. It gets a little more complex even when we start looking at the different types of models that are out there for all of these Android devices. This graph shows the device fragmentation problem that exists for Android, because now you don't only have to program according to what level of the operating system is going to be supported. Now, here you have a problem of different device capabilities and features. What is the screen size? What kind of processing power does it have? You don't exactly know. Whereas if we look at the fragmentation that exists for iPhones, we find that as of today, about half and half between iOS 7 and iOS 8. That means roughly 94% of every single iPhone out there in use in the market is running one of these two operating systems. And once again, how many different iPhone hardware devices are there? Well, counting ones that you can go out and buy on the market today, you have the 5, 5C, 5S, and now 6 and 6 Plus. That's 5 different devices. Clearly, fragmentation is a major problem that you need to face when you are targeting the Android operating system, but the trade-off for that is you will hit a larger demographic of users, since there are so many more Android devices than there are iPhones. However, from a developer's perspective, the ease and simplicity of creating for the iOS platform is so much better because you only have those few devices that you are going to be targeting.